Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the alleged shortages, or the shortages aren't alleged, they really do exist, but the causes of these shortages in supermarkets, in takeout food stores, and pretty much any sort of chain store. The shortages are caused, they say, by COVID, supply chain problems, and by worker shortages. Now, it's recently peaked, and the government and various regional governments and federal government spokespeople and folks from, say, the big grocery chains and the big food franchise chains and so on, takeout food franchise chains, they're all sort of saying as one, and they're all coming out with the same story. It's like they're all reading off the same sheet of talking points, which means it's very dubious what they're saying. It's just too choreographed and too well organised. Now, when they get interviewed on TV programs or current affairs programs or even articles in newspapers and so on, if the CEO of a takeout food chain says, "Well, it's COVID's caused it, and we've got a worker shortage and so on," then there's no searching questions being asked by the media. So the media are completely on board with this. And if anything, they're ginning up the hysteria themselves by sort of saying these shortages are going to get worse and we're all going to die from starvation and so on. So clearly it's a globalist organised thing. It's not a natural organic thing that's happening here. So at least of that we can be sure. So let's now go back to the claims made. Now, the claims are that truck drivers, even small delivery trucks like 2-ton and 3-ton type trucks, that there's a shortage of drivers. There's a sudden shortage of drivers because they're all sick from COVID and or there's not enough immigration. Only brown and black people can apparently drive trucks, or so we're told. Now, the same goes for, say, one of the major international brand of takeout chicken, and the CEO of the local region said that they've just got such a problem getting workers that they've got to keep stores closed. Nobody wants to work is the claim. Now, that's patently absurd, and given that a lot of the benefits that were being paid for people while the full COVID lockdown was on, a lot of those are gone. So people out there certainly need to work, and they had no problem getting workers before COVID. So we need to just take a little dive into these so-called shortages. And there's another organisation that does chicken packing, like a packing plant for chicken. They claim they can't find workers and so on. So there's a shortage of truck drivers, and there's a shortage of workers in certain industries. Now, these are all very low paid entry level jobs, and so you can see where to what extent these businesses are viable in a competitive market economy is sort of another story, I guess. But really, these businesses rely heavily on imported cheap labour, and they exploit this labour, quite substantially, and they have all sorts of things like they can give you an hour's notice to come into work. So you've got to be on virtual standby, but they may not call you for the day. Now, it used to be the regulations on this was you had to, if you're going to roster someone on a casual work basis, you had to give them, it had to be a week in advance. You could sometimes arrange, like you could pay them extra if you wanted to call them in at shorter notice, but all those sort of rules have really gone, and whatever do exist can be bypassed by hiring illiterate peasants from the third world, who, by the way, would have no employment in their own country. So even the shittiest job in the West is better than what they had in their own country. So these businesses rely heavily on importing cheap peasant labour and of bypassing industrial relations and worker, the rules of hiring, Department of Labour and Industry type rules that should apply. So they bypass these rules. One of them's calling people in at short notice. Another one is saying, look, it's quiet now. After a couple of hours, it's quiet now. You can go home. And then a couple of hours later, calling them back in and this sort of thing. So now this is illegal in most areas in Australia, for example, but it's widespread here, and it means that businesses that have piss poor organisational skills can just pass their incompetence on to these third world peasants to sort of take up the slack. Now, slick, better quality management would make a difference, but these guys don't really sort of care about that, and they're probably owned by venture capitalists anyway, and they need this cheap labour. Without the cheap labour, the peasant labour, the ones that can be employed illegally and treated illegally, without that, the business isn't viable, or not as viable as the owners want it to be. So when these peasants went back to India or wherever it is they came from, Africa or something, while COVID was on, then that's created a shortage. Now, this would easily be fixed. All these businesses have to do is say, okay, what must we do to attract workers, local workers that are here? What must we do? Do we pay more? Do we offer more benefits? Do we offer more certainty over hours and better rostering? Do we lift our game to improve the conditions for the workers? And in that way, we can get workers no, they don't try any of that. That is absolutely not on the cards. Now, some claim they're paying bonuses, but when you actually do some digging in, it's they pay, say, a $1,500 signing bonus, but you actually have to pay it back as deductions from your wages in the following weeks and months. And if you haven't paid it back in a certain time, they'll come after you for the money. It's like you signed it on as a debt. This idea they're just giving you $1,500 to walk into the door, that's, maybe it is in some places, but certainly the ones I've looked at, that's just bullshit. They're not doing that. So they're not prepared to improve conditions or circumstances or pay or benefits or anything at all to get the workers. They're just sitting on their ass saying, no, we want third world illiterate peasants or nothing. Now, that's not a viable business, and that's not a very business-like attitude in my view. But that's what's happening there. Now, in terms of the freight and certainly the smaller trucks, the 3 ton and below, they're almost exclusively third world folks now. You're lucky. Maybe in the regional country and rural areas, you'd see white folks doing it, but around the cities and the burbs, it's all black and brown peasants that are living, 10, 20 to a one-bedroom apartment somewhere, and they're out doing the picking the stuff up and doing the deliveries. Now, there's a shortage of them apparently. Now, again, this is and this is causing, so they're claiming it's causing shortages of different things around. Now, I'm not sure that would affect the big chains necessarily. Maybe with their deliveries out, but the trucks coming in are 6 ton plus, trucks delivering to the supermarkets and the grocery stores, and they tend to be white drivers anyway, but not all, but many are. So the shortage is in the smaller trucks, and they're saying that they can't get workers, and there aren't enough, and the workers that are there are getting sick from COVID suddenly, and they're all getting sick at exactly the same time, which seems highly implausible. But anyway, it's the same thing. They won't improve the paying conditions to make it attractive, and all you have to do is keep on improving the conditions and the pay whatever, until it's attractive enough that people want to work there. That's all you have to do. There's no rocket science here. And this is what they're not doing, and not even trying to do, in my view. They'll do some very token thing increase and then go, look, there you go, we've improved and we still can't get workers. The government's got to bring in more illiterate peasants and third world peasants. So that other than leaning on the government to bring in hordes of black and brown peasants, they've got no, again, slick management would react differently. Now, without these peasants from the third world, the transit and the trucking and the freight, and particularly again 3 ton and below trucks, the freight's not. The business just isn't viable. It is relying on peasants. Now, I don't mind if they bringing people in for a 1-year visa or a 2-year visa or something like that, and they're put up in some sort of a barracks type hostel, which is again far better than anything they've come from, and do that. I kind of get that. But inevitably, these people will, or arrange some woman somewhere to have a child with them, and then they've got an anchor baby, and then they become a citizen, and there's also massive fraud and scams going on there. So, or a guy gets out here as an illiterate trucker, and then he claims that his wife's being persecuted in wherever the fuck it is, Bangladesh or something, and she has to come out as well, and then they get an NGO who pays all their legal fees, and just on it goes. So as long as that doesn't happen, people come here and they do their work and then they go home again. Yeah, that's fine. But to have businesses in a capitalist competitive market economy that are reliant completely on peasant third world labor to be viable, then that's not a good thing. And more of the Western economy is slipping into this sort of status, slipping into this area where it is relying on it's relying on monopoly or oligopoly or cartel, or it's relying on international tax offset strategies, or it's relying on peasant slave labor. These are more and more businesses now falling into that category. And even at the other end, businesses that are now corruptly and completely reliant on government contracts that they haven't really won. It's all sleazily decided in a back room, and cozy jobs are given to the relatives of government operatives and so on. More and more of the economy is descending into this, and there's less and less of it is in the vibrant, money-making, wealth-creating economy. So I don't accept any of these claims that there's either a worker shortage, or nobody wants to work, or they can't open the shop, or COVID's caused, or a supply chain, or this or that. These things can all be dealt with and worked around, or just about all of them. And so, like, for example, the Chinese aren't fallen behind in certain manufactured goods. I don't know whether that's from COVID or something else. There's a lot of political chicanery going on there. But there are businesses in Australia that could easily make those products. Why aren't they recipients of a government grant to start manufacturing here and create jobs locally and so on? Why not? Yet those things, those initiatives aren't happening, or certainly not anywhere near the scale that need be. So I just completely reject this idea that nothing can be done, and it's nobody wants to work, and this or that. That's bullshit. These businesses are making in my view, no effort to make the job sufficiently attractive in pay conditions to get people to apply, and that's all they have to do. It's easily fixed. But to do that, they'd have to start acting responsibly in a competitive market economy, without competing for the labour and the skills and the time necessary to do the job. Well, whether it's highly skilled or just heavy lifting or whatever, it doesn't matter. They're competing in a market economy to attract workers, and so they have to do what is necessary to attract them. That's how it works in a capitalist market economy. And what they want to do, though, is to say, we don't want a capitalist market. We want to keep the supernormal profits that we make from all this illicit use of illiterate peasants, but we don't have to go through any of the competitive market pressures and risks to make this money. We want guaranteed outcomes, and we want those damn peasants back to come and drive the trucks and pack the chicken, and that's causing, in the wider economic sense of a capitalist economy, that's causing 10 times more problems than it's solving. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.